Well, it has come to my attention that some people are having a problem with their convergence. And thus far, it's sounding like some type of electronics failure. I've seen a video. Randall Hudson actually messaged me on my YouTube channel and told me about his, and then I was looking around and I actually saw his flight where he was doing nothing but hovering his plane. Uh, I will say I do. He spoke about the linkages going from the servos to the motors, and I do have to admit those are a little flimsy. But at the same time, that's the same size that's used on a 450 size Airline helicopter. But I'm definitely going to be changing these plastic uh, ball joints over to some metal or something, possibly even just a tie rod end, or I'll make some type of modification where it's bolted into this with a thicker rod. I've had no problems myself, except my own error, but it's looking like this is a plug and play version. It did not come with a receiver. I put a Spectrum AR610 receiver in it, which has a much longer antenna wire, which, I mean, I can actually pull it out the top here. And then it has a little side antenna. But the bind and fly version uses the S-bus connector and uses the quad. And from the small conversation I had with Randall Hudson, he basically said it's looking like what's happening is what's known as a brownout. Basically, the surge of power, the motors take so much power away from the flight controller that there's not enough. Basically, on surface, it would be known as BEC. The BEC voltage drops below a certain point, and the receiver and transmitter unbind. I'm using, like I said, an AR610 receiver with a Spectrum DX7S. I have flown it quite far away. I've never lost control of it, but I did take it up pretty high. Took it above the trees in my neighborhood. It was really stupid that I did this. I took it above the trees, and while it was still at full throttle, I switched over to airplane mode, and it just came back to the ground. I had no control. I mean, complete dead stick. I don't know it was the if it was a binding issue. I walked straight up to it and gave it some throttle, and it was fine. It didn't seem like it lost bind. I honestly think it was just my mistake taking it that high. And I do know that it had quite a tailwind, so I think that had something to do with it. But that's something that you're obviously gonna want to look into with this aircraft. Anything new like this, especially when I had a problem with my X-Max. A lot of people know this. I got my Traxxas X-Max funnily, what's that word? Shit, it doesn't matter. I got on the same day, the 21st of December, but of 2015. This year, on the 21st of December, I got this. I had gotten rid of my X-Max back in May, and I got the DBXL, which is right there behind the camera. I've had no problems with it. I've done a lot of upgrades to it, no problems. But that's one thing that I did notice is during the holidays, these companies will rush to get something out to make a buttload of money. And from everything I've read, these things completely sold out. You can't find them anywhere. I know a lot of people that are wanting to get one. But overall, it seems like a great plane. One thing you can do to fix the possible brownout issue, which basically, like I said, there's not enough voltage to keep the receiver basically getting a signal from the transmitter. So it just, I mean, from Randall's video, the whole, funny, my name's Randall too, just every propeller stopped, and it just came crashing to the ground. He was using I don't use Zippies. I use Admirals, uh, 30C. I use better batteries in my opinion. Venoms, Admirals. Um, but that is something. But you're going to want to get a capacitor, a receiver capacitor, to always keep your receiver, the proper voltage going to your receiver, just in case there is a little blip. And also, I didn't know this, but the only other plane I ever had was the Delta Ray. And Randall told me that these motors, when you're getting close to the low voltage, the LVP, low voltage protection, that the motors will surge to let you know you're getting really low. Well, I fly with, where's it at? If I can't, there it is. I always fly with this. Anything that I don't know for sure what my helicopters, anything like that, I always use this. I've got a couple of them. This is a low voltage protection meter. Basically, when it starts getting low on voltage, it will start making a hell of a racket beeping. I have set it to 3.5 volts. Now, there will be voltage drop when you give it full throttle. I've already had that happen a couple times, no problems. I've even flown it further away than I saw in Randall's video, Randall Hudson. He basically said, my Convergence is a piece of crap. I honestly don't think it's a piece of crap. I just think that they put the wrong receiver in this plane. Mine does not have a S-bus connection. Mine has a serial connection. It has 6 wires, one for aileron, one for rudder, one for elevators, one for throttle, and then the 2 for the AS3X, and the other for the plane, the switching over of modes from plane to hover mode. And one thing I have noticed is if the voltage is a little bit low, it will not go into plane mode. So if your battery is a little bit low, it will not go into plane mode. I've tried to show that to people after I've flown it and just show, like, people see it and then they come running and they want to see it flying. Well, I can't, but I can show you this. But then I flip the switch and the motors won't go down. And it's basically because this is too low. But other than that, I haven't had any problems with mine. I absolutely love it. This one was actually a demo. And yes, there are a couple, like this little winglet, which is, this had broke off, which they put back on. Back here, looks like a little bit of scarring from the, from this. This pod actually broke off. This is the second time that it broke off. It broke off when they had it. And when I got it, I just used some hot glue and hot glued the shit out of it to make sure it ain't coming off again. I even put hot glue where there wasn't glue. And up under here is where the is where the receiver and the flight controller is. And you also have your one control surface, but the control surfaces don't matter when you're in quadcopter mode or multi-rotor mode. This isn't a quadcopter, multi-rotor. The only things that happen when you're in multi-rotor mode is the motors tilt back and forth and they change speeds. If you put it in AS3X, the only time the motors tilt is when you're using rudder. That's how a tri-blade, a tricopter actually works. Usually in the back there's a servo that makes the back tilt, but with this sort of being ducted, not really, but it's surrounded. The propeller is surrounded. With it being like that, you can't really put a servo back there or it will hit the styrofoam and eat it up. But like I said, with my days with the X-Max, I'm being very cautious with this. I haven't even flown in plane mode yet. I'm looking to do that tomorrow. I really want to go out to a decent field. I mean, all I gotta do is drive right out there and there's a field that I can take it to. just to try. And a lot of people have talked about the AS3X problems with the timber, I believe it was. And they were worried that they'd have problems with this. And honestly, with these kind of vehicles, if you're in quad rotor mode, there's really no reason to turn off AS3X. That's really going to keep you stable. I've turned it off just to sort of goof around, but I won't do it when it's facing me, only when it's facing away, so I know exactly, okay, if I go right, it's going to tilt right. It won't be backwards. But that's, if you're looking at getting one of these, you're definitely going to want to research. This was sort of an impulse buy on my part. Uh, first, I had gone to Best Buy. I saw the Parrot Mamba, the Parrot Swing, and then I was like, oh hell, I'll go to my local, the most closest hobby shop to me, which is about 18 miles from my house. And they had one. They really didn't want to sell it, but they needed the money because they're not a really big one. They don't sell a lot of stuff. And like I said, they sold me the plug-and-play version, which had the AR610 receiver in it. But I'm definitely going to be getting the $499 capacitor for this to even reduce that chance of brownouts even more. But I have given this thing full throttle many occasions and had no problems. I'm honestly... I've seen those little receivers for the quadcopters. The antenna are very short. And that may be a problem, that receiver by itself. And also people have said the true Spectrum receivers aren't as good as, say, lemon or orange receivers, even though lemon or orange receivers are a third, sometimes a quarter of the price. And they use the same technology, but Spectrum makes sure that you can't use those with the newer firmwares. If you have firmware 1.0, it'll work. And also it's looking like the older transmitters, like the DX8. If it's not, like I said, I have the DX7S. I've had it for a year. It's the newest version of the DX7. So those are basically some things that you're going to want to look at with your plane. I broke my nose off, but that was my fault. I turned AS3X and I tried to do a flip. I did the flip, but the nose caught the ground and scuffed it up on the front and broke it off, not completely, but I just used some hot glue and put that back in place. They have special glue for styrofoam, but I prefer hot glue because I know it works. I don't want to mess around with any other type of glue that I don't know for sure it works unless it's something in the wing where it will affect the weight. Like hot glue, if you try to do something with the wing, it may add a few grams to one side, and with a plane this light, I mean, hell, it may weigh a pound or two. It's really not heavy. It's all styrofoam. But those are definitely some things that you're going to want to keep up to date with. Keep looking back to all the forums for this vehicle. There's already some out there. There's already a Facebook group for them. So join that and learn with the newest things. But I guess my biggest recommendation would be toss that Spectrum quad rotor receiver that works just with S-Bus and put in a serial port receiver, a AR610 or higher, because you need 6 channels with this. You're going to appreciate that longer antenna because you're going to get a hell of a lot better reception. And I really feel bad for the people that have already had problems because I haven't had any except those that have been my fault, and this one has already been tested. I mean, like I said, again, it's a demo, so it was tested many times, and they flew it like a plane, no problems. There was this servo arm the hole was a little loose, so I just replaced it with one for my helicopter parts. But now that I see the problems, I'm definitely going to be putting probably a bigger, I don't know yet what, but it's going to be aluminum. I'm going to put as much aluminum between the servo and the motor pod as I can to strengthen everything. There's really not much to strengthen back here except this pod that will break off, this right here. I really didn't like it when that happened. But that was my fault as well. I hit a tree branch and it just came crashing to the ground because one propeller completely stopped spinning. But like I said, no problems here. Uh, I'm glad I've had no problems, and so many people have this and have had no problems. But like I said, with vehicles that were maybe rushed or that came out maybe a little too soon, there's going to be some problems. So if you have one of these, tread carefully because you don't want your $250 to end up in pieces. And so far, mine hasn't, and I'm going to be damn sure that it stays in one piece, and I'm going to be very careful with it. Because I honestly, some people say quad rotors need to, VTOL needs to stay in its own category, and fixed wing aircraft need to stay in its own category, even when it comes to full size. Well, if we have the technology, why can't we? Like this, it works fine. But maybe there are a few glitches that need to be fixed, and Horizon Hobby stands up to their products. But what sucks with this right now is they're all sold out. The warehouse doesn't even get any more in till tomorrow, and today is Monday the 26th. So Tuesday the 27th, I was told the warehouse is going to get more in. Then they have to ship them out from there to retailers, and then they got to be sold. But then when it comes to parts, that's one thing I'm worried about. Like if I need a new airframe, if I need a new flight controller, if I need a new, well, I'm sure these motors will be easy to find, but a new pod, a new motor pod, or anything like that. But I do know now that I am going to be a lot more careful. I've already been very careful, but you can't be too careful with something like this, especially when you know other people have had problems. Tread lightly. You definitely don't want to end up with your $250, and that's, in my opinion, that's pretty cheap, except it doesn't come with batteries, transmitter. So in total, you're looking at about $500 for this plane, because there's not even there is a bind and fly version, but there's no version that comes with a transmitter like the Delta Ray. And the Delta Ray was $250 with the transmitter, and it was brushed. And I have videos on that about how that was when I first started my YouTube account. But I'm going to stop it there. It's almost 11:15. But I just want to give some warnings out there to people that have the Convergence, and what you may want to do to help it, like get the receiver, capacitor. Definitely look into strengthening the, these look a little loose, and I'm going to look for aluminum now, because aluminum would be a much better, I may have some in my, I know I have some in my helicopter boxes. It's just, will they fit is the question. So that's basically it for this video. Everybody fly safe, keep all four wheels on the ground, and see you next time.